Hello, my name is Jack Van Welzen. I will be discussing the current migrant crisis existing in Calais, France. Over the past decade, thousands of migrants have been moving into Calais in the hopes of eventually migrating to Britain, a land that they see as full of economic prosperity. However, neither the British citizens nor the British government are enthusiastic about this flow of immigrants. In an attempt to solve this problem, the British and French governments spent millions of dollars in creating a more secure border with barbed wire fences and police squads. Throughout the course of the past few years, this solution has become inadequate as the number of illegal immigrants flowing into Britain has been on the rise. The reason behind this is that most of these immigrants have traveled a long distance starting in the Middle East, moving through Italy to get into Europe, and finally landing in Calais. After such a journey, many of them are not willing to simply turn around and leave with no reward, so they either stay in Calais until Britain accepts them, or they try to illegally jump the fences and cross the border. The British and French governments have tried formulating new solutions to solve both these groups' problems only to be faced with more failure. In order to solve the problem of the fence jumpers, the French poured several $1 million into buffing up the border control. As BBC News stated, the port is now protected by 16-foot fences topped with coils of razor wire and CCTV, with the gates and exterior guarded by heavily armed French riot police. Although looking good on paper, the solution didn't solve the problem, it only moved it to other parts of Europe. Once the migrants saw that they cannot pass at Calais, they did not give up and go home, but instead they moved to other port cities and caused more issues. Because of this displacement issue, building more fences has proven to be only a moderately successful solution filled with several holes. On the other hand, the solution for those who remained in Calais was far less intuitive and nowhere near as effective. Two main issues arose when trying to empty Calais of its residents. The first problem was that some of the migrants were not seeking economic opportunity, but were running from the oppression of their home country. These refugees were not the troublemakers, but it was hard to distinguish between them and the prosperity seekers. Therefore, if all the migrants were to be pushed out of Calais, many innocent people would have their rights of refuge violated. Secondly, if it was possible to distinguish between the groups, and the French government used its military might to push the troublemakers out, they could simply walk back to Calais. Because of these issues, the French government decided that they could not push the migrants out of the city, so the only solution would be to house them. On top of the millions of dollars spent on the fences, the government spent even more money on converting old shipping containers into shelters for the Calais residents. This decision has worsened the condition of the city and has led to no significant gains. Although the current solutions are clearly failing to adequately relieve stress on Calais, the French and British governments continue to dump money into these programs. Not only are they wasting money on the failed propositions, but they are also not working together to solve the crisis. Instead, each country is trying to solve the issue by itself. Due to the failure of the past attempts to solve the Calais crisis, the French and British governments must stop funding their current programs in order to create a solution that gives the prosperity seekers an economic benefit to leaving. However, this cannot be done by one power alone, so they must start cooperating. By using their combined power, the French and British can easily find the funding and manpower required for a working solution. If the work isn't evenly divided and too much responsibility is given to one country, it will leave a lasting impact on the country's future. As Bernard Cazeneuve, the French Minister of the Interior, stated, if the problem is resolved using Britain alone as a safety valve, the connection between Britain and France will decay. This decay could take years to recover from, leaving the only solution to be to cooperate. With their combined might, the countries need to stop the current fence and shelter system and start offering economic benefits to those who live in Calais. Because the issue is rooted in a group of people who want new economic opportunities, giving them said opportunities will alleviate pressure and potentially solve the crisis. Critics of this solution may say that it would require far too much funding to give money away to every opportunity seeker in Calais. However, several $1 million are already being spent on building fences and shelters. By funneling this money into the new program instead of wasting it on failing systems, little to no extra money has to be spent by the countries. Others may argue that there are simply not enough fences to contain the illegal immigrants, and more money needs to be spent on strengthening the border. Looking into the past, several issues such as the displacement problem have spawned because of the building up of the border. Adding more to the border will not result in success, but more failures as seen by past mistakes. The only real solution is to provide an economic benefit to those forced out of Calais. First, using their combined strength, Britain and France need to push all of the migrants out of Calais. In the process of doing so, they can interview all of the migrants and distinguish between the refugees and the opportunity seekers. Next, the refugees are returned to Calais while the others are given money and told not to come back. Lastly, more restriction needs to be put into place on those entering both Calais and Italy. By stopping migrants at the edge of Calais, a buildup of opportunity seekers will never occur in the city. The restriction of Italy allows the flow of those seeking economic prosperity to never reach Calais, making the issue even lighter. If France and Britain are able to move on from their past and take a leap towards a new solution, they will almost certainly be relieved of this issue.